Hello students. Today I would be starting with the next chapter of business studies, that is the principles of management. This chapter is going to be correlated with the first chapter. In the first chapter you have already studied what is management. I would like to conclude it once more that management is basically a process of getting things done from others, right? So now in the second chapter we are going to study about the principles of management. Students, before starting with the chapter, you must understand that these principles, are different from rules. Basically, rules are, I would say, rules are the policies. Rules are the statements that one has to follow. For example, rule means if somebody skips a red light, so that person has to pay the penalty for it, right? So rule actually invites penalty to it. But in the case of principles are basically the statements that are accepted by the society. Okay, so principles may be followed or principles may not be followed, but each principle, once we follow the particular principle, it actually gives a particular result, right? Like for example, in science you must have studied about rule of thumb. So for that thing, principles basically, they give you an idea about the social perspective. Principles give you an idea about the result of it, because somebody has already experienced it, somebody has already made that guideline. So basically principles do not invite penalty to it, but uh, rules actually invite penalty to it. So there is a difference between rule and principle. So now the name of the chapter is Principles of Management. Basically, we here are going to study about two researchers, or maybe we can call it as two managers, Henry Fayol and F.W. Taylor. These two names are very important. We are going to study about these two people. They both were managers in their particular enterprises, and they actually uh, made certain principles. So principle means certain guidelines, and they wanted the managers to understand those guidelines in order to achieve a particular result. So on the screen on your left side, it is the photo of Henry Fayol. Okay, so now let me start with the chapter, and then again I'll conclude this about later also. Management principles are the statements of fundamental truth which act as a guideline for taking managerial decisions. So basically, these principles, these are guidelines. These are statements. They help a manager to take a particular managerial decision. The manager may find certain situations, certain circumstance confusing, so in order to help that manager, these two, Henry Fayol and F.W. Taylor, have developed certain principles. Now one out of them actually made general principles, and the other one made the scientific principles. So we are going to study about them in detail later on, but just for the timing, you must understand these management principles are the statements, or these are the guidelines which help the managers to take a decision, but these are not rules. Now, the second slide says principles of management are broad and general guidelines for decision making and behavior for the of the manager. So, in this slide, you can actually conclude here that these principles of management, they actually give you a perspective, or they actually give you an insight of a particular situation. That means if a particular principle is followed, it's going to give a particular result. So we are going to study about these principles in this chapter. Now, as you can see, I have actually made a comparison here between the management principles and the pure science. As you know, we have already concluded this in chapter 1, that management is not pure science. It is an inexact science, right? So we can't call principles of management to be as rigid as the principles of science. Once like in science, once the principles are decided, those principles are followed, or those principles are experimented, and the results are similar. But in case of management, the result may vary. So here the management principles are flexible. Students, you must understand that management principles are very very different from the science principles. Like in science, you must have studied about Newton, or you must have studied about many other scientists. They develop their principles, and those principles are rigid. Rigid means they cannot be changed. They are applied in absolute manner. That means those science principles are applied as it is. It was developed by those scientists. So nothing can be changed in those principles. But in management principles, under management principles, we can actually apply our creativity, and we can actually little bit change those principles also, or maybe we can combine two three principles together and make a new one out of them. So management principles are flexible, they are not rigid as science principles. Science principles do not actually cater to the creativity of a particular person, but management principles, they cater to the creativity of a particular person. The manager can be creative as well as can apply these management principles. So I hope this much is clear to you. In the next slide, I've given a sort of introduction of Henry Fayol. For understanding the principles that were given by Henry Fayol, you must understand who was Henry Fayol and how he actually, developed these principles. How did it came to his mind to develop such principles? Henry Fayol was born in France in 1841. He got his degree in mining engineering. So, students, you can here relate that he was a science student in 1860 and started working as an engineer in a coal mining company. In 1888, he was promoted as the managing director of that company. At that time, the company was in a situation of insolvency. So as soon as he became the MD of the company was in a bad situation, and it was about to it was about to become insolvent. He accepted the challenge. He being the MD of the company, he actually had to apply something, to actually change the situation. So he applied his managerial technique to bring out the company from the situation, and he succeeded. So he actually, did a basically he did those he actually made those principles out of his experience, out of his creativity, out of his experimentation. So now let me tell you, Henry Fayol has actually developed 14 principles. He has given 14 principles of management. Those principles are not scientific, those principles are general principles of management. Students, please do remember this, that Henry Fayol gave us the general principles of management. Okay, though he was a science student, or science from a science background, so he actually tried management, from the perspective of a science background. But he couldn't actually make his principles in a pure science manner. So that is why his principles are called general principles. When he retired after 30 years, the company was a leading coal steel company with strong financial background. So his 14 principles that he actually had implemented, they were successful, and that company who was on a verge of breakdown, and who was on a verge of insolvency, actually, that company actually came back to his original position, and actually they gained the financial strength. So Henry Fayol, with his 14 principles, they were successful. So now let me read name of the 14 principles. Students, as you're going to read these principles for the first time, you might find these names very different, or you must have not heard about them previously. But you must learn these 14 names. They are very very important. From board point of view, they oftenly ask the board, oftenly ask, they give you a case study, and then they tell you to identify the principle out of 14 principles. So it is very very important here to understand these 14 principles, and also to understand the pros and cons of these 14 principles. Like after each slide, I've already shared these slides with you and I've told you to write these slides in your notebook. So you must have noticed that in each slide I've also mentioned the positive and the negative aspect of each principle. So let me read name of them for you. The first one could be anyone. There is no order, students. Please do remember, this is not a process. So any principle could be the first one. Division of work, authority and responsibility, principle of discipline, unity of command, unity of direction, subrogation of individual interest to general interest, remuneration of persons. Then the next one is centralization and decentralization, principle of scalar chain, then principle of order, principle of equity, stability of tenure, principle of initiative, and aspirate the corps. Students, here the name are actually, I couldn't type them in a proper manner, but as I will begin with the next slide, you will be able to read them in a proper manner. The first principle that we can talk about is principle of division of work. Students, you must have noticed when we actually see a building work or a construction work going on, you must have seen that the workers at the construction site, they divide the work, right? Or you can say in a factory when the production is going on, suppose the factory is producing chalks or is manufacturing shirts, so the work there is divided among all the workers. Why it is divided among all the workers? So that there is no chaos, there is no confusion, who is going to do what. And if the work is divided among the the workers will be responsible for their own work. So there is not going to be any confusion, chaos. So this principle is very very important. As you can see, there is a cabinet here, right? There are four cabinets, and the work is divided among different workers. So according to this principle, the whole work must be divided into small tasks, and instead of assigning the whole work to one person, only one task of work should be assigned to one person according to his capability, qualification, and experience of that person. So again, quoting the example of manufacturing shirt, students, suppose we give a work to a particular worker to produce shirt. So that worker has to cut the design, stitch it, iron it, and pack it, and put color to that shirt. If we want a particular worker to do all the work, so that worker will not be able to do it in 100% effective and efficient manner. Why? Because that worker may not be good at doing all these work. Students, please do remember, when a particular person does that work for hours and hours or years and years, that work is repetitive, it does it on a repetitive manner, that person becomes the person becomes very responsible for that work, or the person gains the experience of doing that work, and because of that experience, that person becomes expert of that work. So according to Henry Fayol, the particular task, it should be divided into small small tasks. Like for producing a shirt, the shirt should be designed by a particular group of people, then it should be stitched by different people, and it should be ironed by different people, and then the colors to it should be put up by some other group of people. So the work has to be divided among the workers. Now this work which is going to be divided among the workers should be based on their capability. The particular work that we are going to assign to a particular worker, the worker should be capable, having that capability of doing it. And qualification also, qualification means the worker should have some kind of you can say experience, or some kind of knowledge of doing it, and then experience also. So it's very very important to divide the work among a group of people. When a person will perform a part of job again and again, he will become perfect and specialized in doing that job, and efficiency level will improve. I've already told you this. So this stanza in the pink font, it's basically the positive point of division of work. So why division of work should be done? If a question comes to your mind, the answer should be division of work should be done so that a particular worker becomes efficient or specialized or perfect in a particular job. So now the positive aspect, the positive effect of the principle is that the one particular worker becomes specialized and his efficiency improves. And now what are the consequences of this principle? Consequences means the result of this principle. There will not be specialization. There will not be specialization, and there will not be specialization. That means in this in this the right hand side of the diagram, this basically tells you that even if a particular person doing that work again and again, that person might become bored of that work. Suppose a worker, he is given a task of stitching the shirts, and he has been doing that work of stitching the shirts from last 5 years. So that the worker, his efficiency is going to go down. Why? Because that worker is going to become bored of that particular work, because there's no new thing to it, there's nothing new to it. So that there, then his specialization is going to decrease. So this is basically a hypothesis. That means this is basically a very imagining, that his efficiency is going to go down because he's going to become bored of it, that particular work doing again and again. So I hope the first principle is clear to you. Then, in the second principle, the name of the principle is authority and responsibility. Authority means power to take decisions. Responsibility means obligation to complete those jobs assigned on time. So basically, what does authority means? Authority means that we have a power to take decisions, and responsibility means it is our duty, it is our obligation to complete that particular work given to us. It is our responsibility. So it is our obligation. According to this principle, there must be balance between authority and responsibility. Students, please do remember this, that there should be balance between authority and responsibility. Now what do we mean by this? Actually, by this principle, Henry Fayol wanted to educate the managers that while actually giving authority to the subordinates, who are the subordinates who work under a particular manager, right? For example, in a school there is one principal, then there is one vice principal, then there are a set of teachers. So there is hierarchy, right? You remember in the first chapter I taught you about the hierarchy, the levels of authority, right? So when we divide authority among our employees, among our workers, so there should be responsibility and authority given to workers in equal amount, or there should be balance to it. Now let me give an example of it, so you will be able to understand. For example, suppose there was one manager A, and he was going out for some urgent office work out of the city. So he actually told his subordinate Mr. B to actually produce shirts or look after the production work in his absence. So Mr. B was given the responsibility to look after the production work. Okay, now Mr. A, the manager, while leaving, did not give Mr. B the required amount of resources to produce those shirts, or the material required, the machine required. He did not give anything, of it, and did not give any keys to that to Mr. B. So in this situation, what is going to happen? See, Mr. A actually, gave the responsibility to Mr. B, but Mr. A did not give the authority to Mr. B, for using man, material, and resources for the production work. So what is the consequence of this? The result of this is going to be that Mr. B will not be able to look after the production work, because he was not given the authority to use any of the material, right? So authority, cannot be given, or responsibility cannot be given, alone. They should be given in an equal balance, so they go hand in hand. Authority and responsibility, there should be their balance should be straight. Okay. Now excess of authority without matching responsibility may bring negative result. And similarly, excess of responsibility without matching authority will not allow the worker to complete the job on time. So I hope this stanza is clear to you. I've already given example of it. There is need to bring parity. Parity means balance between both for the best result. So there should be parity, there should be balance between the authority and responsibility if we want to achieve the best results. So now let us look at the positive aspect of it. Then if there is proper parity, proper balance between authority and responsibility, there's no misuse of authority. Why there's no going to be misuse of the authority? Because authority, along with the authority, the responsibility comes. So the manager is going to be responsible for the work, so he's not going to misuse the authority. Helps in meeting responsibilities on time without delay. If authority is given to the managers will be able to perform the responsibility on time without the delay. So now what are going to be the consequences of it, result of it? Misuse of authority due to excess authority and delay of work. That means the negative aspect of it could be, if suppose the balance was not straight, the parity was not straight, and authority was more, so the definitely the manager is going to misuse that excess authority. And because there was no balance between authority and responsibility, there is going to be delay in work. So I hope this much is clear to you. So in the second principle, we can conclude that there should be balance between authority and responsibility. If we do not strike a balance between them, there is going to be delay in the work. So I hope the second principle is clear to you. Then the third principle is principle of discipline. You already know what is discipline, right? Discipline refers to the general rules and regulations. Now here rules means there's going to be penalty of it. If particular rule is not followed, there's going to be penalty for it. Suppose in a office the reporting time is 10 o'clock, and if some employee have a habit of coming late to the office, they are going to be penalized for it. They are going to pay penalty for it. There may be their any kind of leave would be deducted, or there maybe their pay may be deducted. So discipline actually invites some kind of fine or some kind of penalty if it is not followed for systematic working in an organization. So Henry Fayol actually stressed about the discipline, that discipline should be followed. Each organization has its own rules and regulations. For example, uh, our school has set up rules and regulations, right? The students have to report on time, the teachers have to report on time, right? So if those rules are not followed, definitely there is going to be some consequence of it, some penalty of it. Discipline does not mean only rules and regulation, but it also means developing commitment in the employees. See, students, here we must understand why Henry Fayol wanted discipline. Because Henry Fayol wanted commitment in the employees towards organization and towards each other. If there is no discipline, if there is no proper coming on time, leaving on time, or there is no proper place of everything. If discipline is not there in the organization, then definitely the organization is not going to excel. It's not going to do well. So discipline means commitment of the employee towards the organization, and also of the employee towards each other. Fayol insists that the discipline is required at superior as well as subordinate level. See, Henry Fayol was very, very intelligent to actually, mention this, that discipline is not only for the subordinates. It's not only for the people at the lower level. You remember the three levels we had studied in the first chapter: the top level, the middle level, and the supervisory level. Henry Fayol says that discipline should be followed by all the levels, by all the levels in all type of organizations, and at by all the employees, all the workers. So in a way we can say discipline is pervasive, right? Disciplinary rules shall not be applicable only on subordinates. Employees will obey orders only when the management play their part by providing good leadership. So here Henry Fayol has already mentioned that employees are supposed to follow orders, obey rules when only the management is, they doing their part on their behalf. That means the management also has also is supposed to follow rules. Let me give one more example of it. Suppose the management has a habit of putting a delay for providing the salary to the people, to the workers, right? Sometimes the salary comes on the first week, sometimes the salary of a particular month comes in the mid of the month, and sometimes the salary is not paid, it's paid after 2 months, or it's paid after 3 months. So in this case, the management is also not following the discipline, so here the employees actually, they can actually raise voice against the unfair treatment. They can actually say that they are not going to follow the discipline of the organization, because the discipline has to be followed by the management as well, by all the levels. Okay, so now, what are the positive aspect of it? If discipline is followed, every work is going to be done systematically, and if the work is done systematically, definitely the efficiency will improve. Now, what are the consequences, the negative aspect of it? If discipline is not followed, suppose discipline is not there, so what is going to happen, students? Disorder will be there, a lot of confusion, chaos, it's going to be there. Confusion, chaos basically means confusion. Now if confusion is there, nobody knows what to do, and who is supposed to do it, and who is supposed to come on what time. If something like this happens in an organization, definitely then organization is going to waste its a lot of resources, right? So if we do not want resources of the organizations to get wasted, definitely the principle of discipline should be followed. The students, I'm trying my level best to explain these principles in a very very simple manner. If you find any difficulty, please do contact me later, and try to read these slides as many times you can read, or you may maybe also you should refer to the NCRT. I've tried connecting these slides to the NCRT also. You may find many sentences from the NCRT later on, but students, you should refer NCRT. It's a Bible for us. Now, the fourth principle is unity of command. Students, have here given you a diagram, or I can say a sketch of it. See what is right and what is wrong. There is one manager on the top, right? And that manager has got five subordinates. You can see in the diagram, right? And now the manager gives orders to the five subordinates, right? There's one simple thing, that there is one manager, and that one manager has got five subordinates, and that one manager is going to give order to the all the five subordinates, right? Now what is wrong? Suppose there are three managers, and those three managers have got six, or have got five subordinates. Now these three managers are going to give orders to all these five subordinates, and these five subordinates are going to get confused. Why? Because they're going to receive orders from three different managers, and each manager would want his order to be followed first. So in such case, the employees, the subordinates, they might find very very difficult to survive and to complete the task, because each manager is going to pay emphasis on his order, right? He or she may want his order to be followed first. According to this principle, an employee should receive orders from one boss only. Please underline this line, very very important. It says that each employee should receive order from one boss only. Each employee should have only one boss. If employee has more than one boss, definitely the employee is not going to do the work in an effective or efficient manner. Because if he receives order from more than one boss, then he is going to get confused and will not be able to understand that whose order must be executed or whose order must be followed first. And on the other hand, if the employee is receiving orders from more bosses, he gets chance to give excuses. The employee also may become lethargic out of the confusion, out of the chaos, and may not want to work. He might or she might give excuses, that by saying that he's busy executing the orders of the other manager, so the employee is going to give excuses. So if we want the work to be done in an effective and efficient manner, then there should be unity of command. Unity means one, so there should be one command. Students, please understand the meaning of this principle. Unity of command means there should be one order from one boss to an employee. That means each employee only can have one boss. If there are more bosses, it can create problem of ego clash among the superiors, as every manager wants his order to be executed by the employee first. So I've already told you this. Let's look at the positive and negative aspect of it. If unity of command is followed, so there's no going to be ego clashes among the manager, because every manager will be given different set of subordinates to work. So and every subordinate will have only one boss, so there is no going to be ego clash. Then and if there is no ego clash, each employee, each worker knows his or her work, then there is going to be effectiveness and efficiency in doing that work. And suppose, students, if unity of command is not followed, so definitely there is going to be confusion in the mind of the employees, and there is no discipline. It would be difficult to maintain discipline, because there would be ego clashes, and the employees or the managers may fight among themselves. Okay, so principle of unity of command is very, very important. The fifth principle that we can read here is unity of direction. So again, the previous one was unity of command, and now here is unity of direction. Unity means one. So unity means one here actually, that each employee should be given one direction. That means actually employees, they are supposed to be given order by one boss, right? So when one boss gives order, so that particular employee or that particular departments get direction from one side. According to this principle, one unit means one plan. Here one unit means one department. In the previous chapter, students, have already gave you some examples of different departments, right? Production department, finance department, accounting department, human resource department, marketing department. So suppose there is one department. If one department is there and that one department has got different plans, so people, the workers among that particular department may get confused that which plan is to be followed first. So it means every department must have one plan, and all the employees in that department must work for that one plan. Each department is going to have only one plan. That is, the effort of all the members and employees of the organization must be directed towards one direction, that is achievement of common goals. If this principle is applied, it leads to coordination. We have already discussed what is coordination. See, that is why I told you in the beginning of the video that this chapter is going to be very, very correlated with the first chapter. You will be able to understand this chapter only when you have thoroughly studied the first chapter. So now you know the meaning of coordination, right? So student, if we want coordination, to be in a particular department, that particular department must have only one plan. So all the people in one department will work in one direction. They are not going to clash with each other. Each department and a group having common objective must have one head and one plan only. One head means one boss of that department, right? Production manager, the finance manager, the accounting manager. There should be one manager of it. People engaged in the same kind of activities must have the same objective in a single plan. That means, students, here the workers in a particular department, they must have a common objective to follow, common plan to follow. This is essential. Essential means important to ensure that unity and coordination in the enterprise. So if we want coordination, there should be one unit. One unit means one department with one plan. Now, what is positive aspect of it? If unity of direction is followed, there is going to be achievement of organization goal, right? We'll be able to achieve the organization goal very well. Now, second thing is efforts of all the employees will be unified. Unified means will be united towards one direction. So all the employees are going to work in one direction. Suppose students, if unity of direction is not followed, so there will be difficulty in achieving the organization goals, and there will be lack of coordination because the department is going to have different plans and each worker is going to get confused. They are going to work on different plans. So this is very very important to be followed. I hope student you are not getting confused between unity of direction and unity of command. Students, please do remember unity of command actually means there should be one boss and there should be one subordinate, right? One boss is going to give order to the one subordinate, or one subordinate is going to get order from the one boss. But in unity of direction means each department will have one direction, each department will have one head, and one manager is going to direct in a particular way, in a similar way. So all the people in one department will work in a united direction. Now the sixth principle that we can read here is subordination of individual interest to general interest. This is very very interesting principle. I will try to explain this to you in a very simple manner. Suppose students, we want to buy furniture for our school. Okay, students. So, for buying furniture, the principal is going to give order to a particular teacher, because the teacher is one particular teacher is going to be the furniture in charge of the school, right? Now, the furniture in charge, suppose Mr. A is there. Mr. A is supposed to buy furniture for the school. Now, Mr. A wants to buy furniture from one of his relative, who is the dealer in furniture. So now Mr. A is going to give benefit, to his relative. Suppose there was one chair which actually can be bought in the market for rupees 2000. One desk that can be bought in the market for 2000. But now Mr. A wants to give benefit to his relative. So Mr. A might think that they are going to misquote, or they are going to charge more from the school, thinking that his relative is going to get benefit. So his relative decides that he is going to sell one desk at rupees 2500. See, one desk could be bought at 2000. Now Mr. A, because his relative wants to get benefit, he is going to charge rupees 2500 from the school. So now Mr. A is not honest with the organization. So here Mr. A is actually more interested in providing benefit to his relative rather than thinking of the organization. But student, this is totally dishonest behavior. This is not fair on the part of Mr. A. Henry Fayol says that each employee, each individual should subordinate the individual interest to the general interest. That means each subordinate, each employee, each member of the company, of the organization must think for the welfare of the company, for the welfare of the organization first, and then they should think about the welfare of themselves or anybody else. So the welfare of the organization should be put up at the first place. So here Mr. A was not thinking of the welfare of the organization. So he was ready to actually charge more from the school. So now Mr. Henry Fayol says that this principle actually is the interest of the organization must supersede the interest of the individual or the employees. That means the interest of the organization must come before the interest of the individual or the employees. Mr. A was interested in providing benefit, right? So he was thinking of himself or providing benefit to his relative, right? He was not thinking of the organization. So that is unfair, that is dishonest. He should have thought of the organization rather than putting himself first. In the organization, all the employees are working with some objective, and there is always an objective of an organization. There is objective of an organization. What are the objectives you have studied in the first chapter? Social objectives, organizational objectives, and personal objectives. So before coming to the social objectives or the personal objectives, the all the employees of all the levels must think about the objectives of the organization. If the objective of the individuals are in the same direction, then there is no problem. But if the objectives of both the group are different direction, then manager must try to reconcile individual interest to the organization interest. So here the Henry Fayol, here the Henry Fayol says that the manager, the role of the manager here increases. The manager must reconcile, the manager must actually be able to sort out the interest, must be able to reconcile the interest of the individual with the interest of the organization. And if it is not possible, then the individual interest must be sacrificed for achieving the organization goal. And if it is the manager is not able to reconcile, then the individual has to sacrifice, has to actually put up the organization first. Organization has to be put up at the first place rather than his or her own interest. So I hope this is clear to you. This principle is very very interesting and also a bit little difficult to understand. But students, as you're going to read it again and again, you will be able to develop an understanding. Now let's see the positive part of it. If we follow this principle, we are going to achieve the organizational goal very easily, and there is going to be coordination between the individual and the organization goal, right? You remember the personal objectives, the organizational objectives. These objectives are to be reconciled. There should be coordination. And if we do not follow this principle, then we'll be not be able to achieve the organization goal, and also the employees will suffer in the long run. Why the employees are going to suffer in the long run? Because see, the particular employees has put up his interest first, so he's going to overcharge the organization. So now, because Mr. A wanted his benefit, his own benefit, so he has sacrificed the benefit of other employees. So in the long run, the other employees are going to actually suffer the loss which would be caused by Mr. A. So this is the negative consequence of it. So this is the sixth principle, students. In this video, I'm going to cover the six principles of Henry Fayol, and the next video I'll cover the rest of the six principles. I hope this much is clear to you.